Welcome to Zenith Global News.
Imagine this. A sudden, localized conflict erupts in one specific region, and literally overnight shockwaves tear through the entire world of global diplomacy. Suddenly, world leaders are scrambling, they're forced to realign and redraw the global geopolitical map in real time. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to look closely at the data and reports to understand exactly how these dominoes fall. It brings us to a massive, overarching question. How does a sudden war in the Middle East instantly redraw the map of global alliances? To figure that out, we have to look at the recent, explosive conflict between the US and Iran. Because you see, it's not just about the military actions on the ground. It's really about the massive economic and diplomatic ripples those actions create, which end up pushing global superpowers to make very public and very strategic choices. All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, the catalyst, the war in the Middle East. Then, we'll analyze Trump and Xi in Beijing, followed by Putin's strategic energy play. Next up is Modi navigating European diplomacy before we tie the whole shebang together with the ultimate shifts in global alliances. Let's dive right into part 1, the war in the Middle East, the ultimate catalyst for these global shifts. The escalation here was incredibly rapid. The conflict kicked off on February 28th with a surprise US and Israeli attack, which actually resulted in the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Fast forward just a few months, and Iran claimed to have downed an American F-35 fighter jet. And that brings us to the incredibly fragile present. U.S. President Donald Trump issuing a brief 2 to 3 day peace ultimatum, while Iran is over there warning that a return to war will feature many more surprises. Now, if we look at Operation Epic Fury, it had some very clear, aggressive military objectives, right? Destroying ballistic missiles, dismantling production facilities, sinking the Iranian Navy, weakening proxy groups. Pretty standard military goals. But nestled right within this campaign was a highly surprising covert political strategy aimed at total regime change. Get this. The reports detail an audacious U.S.-Israeli plan to install Mahmoud Ahmadinejad as the new leader of Iran. Yes, that Ahmadinejad, the former hardline president widely known for his anti-American views. The strategy involved an Israeli strike on his house, specifically to free him from government house arrest, hoping an internal critic could just take the reins. But it didn't pan out. Ahmadinejad was wounded in the strike, became disillusioned with the plan, and that left the regime change goal completely unfulfilled. Okay, moving on to part 2, Trump and Xi in Beijing and the absolute scramble for solutions. This is where things get really interesting, because the fallout from the Middle East severely hampered energy flows and closed the absolutely critical Strait of Hormuz. Right in the middle of this extreme volatility, President Trump confidently claimed Iran was, quote, begging to make a deal. He then traveled to Beijing, where Chinese President Xi Jinping received him with just incredible pomp and circumstance. But despite this super grand reception, reports indicate Trump actually left without securing Beijing's active help to reopen the vital Strait of Hormuz. Which brings us nicely to part 3, Putin's strategic energy play. Because literally immediately following Trump's departure, Russian President Vladimir Putin touched down in Beijing. Now, this comparison is absolutely crucial for understanding global shifts. Look at the vastly different outcomes of these two visits. Trump sought immediate assistance with the maritime energy crisis, but basically came up empty-handed. Putin, however, he arrived offering a tangible solution. His visit completely lacked the performative opulence of Trump's trip, yet Xi welcomed him with open arms as an old friend. It's just a really stark look at the highly transactional nature of modern diplomacy. While Putin was there, Xi Jinping made this very pointed statement. He warned of unilateral and hegemonic countercurrents, which was widely interpreted as a veiled swipe at the United States. Basically, Xi and Putin utilized this visit to loud and proudly showcase their unyielding alliance. Even though China relies heavily on the freedom of the world's waterways and really wants the Middle East conflict to end, they use this exact moment to present a united, resilient front with Russia. So, what was Russia actually offering? That's the key. Weakened by Western sanctions, Putin is capitalizing on the global energy crisis spurred by the Strait of Hormuz closure. He used the Beijing visit to push for progress on the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline. This is a massive, massive strategic play. It offers China a secure, land-based energy alternative that entirely bypasses those super volatile Middle Eastern sea routes, a real game changer. Let's pivot slightly to part 4, Modi navigates European diplomacy. To see how these global energy anxieties play out culturally, we're going to track Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's multi-nation European tour. Just like we compared Trump and Putin, look at the stark juxtaposition of Modi's tour. It's like night and day. In Rome, Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni hosted Modi for a super warm dinner, a private Colosseum tour, and cultural celebrations with Italian artists performing classical Indian music. But the second he traveled north to Norway, the atmosphere shifted drastically into immediate diplomatic friction. So, what caused the friction in Oslo? It was triggered by the Norwegian daily Aftenposten. They published a cartoon depicting PM Modi as a snake charmer playing a traditional instrument to a snake shaped like a fuel pump nozzle. Obviously, this was a direct commentary on the global fuel price hikes caused by the Middle Eastern War. But by relying on these outdated colonial-era stereotypes, the publication sparked accusations of racism and a really swift diplomatic row. It just goes to show how quickly economic anxieties can devolve into cultural disrespect. And finally, Part 5, Shifts in Global Alliances, the New Diplomatic Reality. We can now clearly see how all these seemingly isolated incidents are tied together. So what's the big takeaway here? It's pretty clear. In our increasingly volatile world, alliances are actively being defined by three main factors. Number 1, securing alternative energy routes. Number 2, aligning mutual strategic and military interests. And number 3, performing public diplomatic respect, or, as we saw in Norway, dealing with the massive fallout when that respect breaks down. Which leaves us with this final thought. As old alliances fracture and energy routes are being completely redrawn across continents, we have to ask ourselves, who truly holds the balance of power in this new global order? Is it the nations with the biggest military might, or is it the nations controlling the land-based energy pipelines?
Share and subscribe. Stay informed. Stay aware. Stay ahead. Only on Zenith Global News.